Awesome. I'm very excited to talk to you, man.
Oh, nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you. So, Lance, what's going on, man?
Working. That's pretty much it. It's been a busy year, but yeah, it's been good. It's been fun.
It's been a crazy busy year so far.
Yeah, in a good way. Yeah, a lot of sessions all over the place and travel between California, New York, a bit of European stuff. Yeah, it's been good. Like as a freelance engineer, it's nice to stay busy.
Yeah. Where are you based out of mostly? What city?
I live in New York City, so yeah, I live in Lower Manhattan, and I just opened up a little studio in downtown Brooklyn, which I'm sitting in right now. Just a little personal studio, but yeah, I live in New York full time, and then just travel to wherever I needed to be for sessions these days. So yeah, this year almost feels like I was living back in Los Angeles because I was out there for so much time, but technically home for me is New York.
Nice. Very cool. So take me to the beginning. How did you get involved with this life called music? Where did it start for you? What did you listen to growing up? How did music affect your life?
I mean, I'm from New Zealand, so it kind of started back there. Had a slightly musical family. Like no one worked in music or anything, but mother played piano, and there's a bit of music around. So I started learning the guitar when I was a kid. When I was like 7 years old or something, started playing that. And so when I was a teenager, I was into Metallica and metal and rock bands and stuff like that. I was a bit of a what we call a bogan. And yeah, I just took it quite seriously, and I played a lot, and it was just the thing I did every day. So I was all about playing the guitar. And when I was 12 or 13 or so, I got a little 4-track recorder and started messing around with recording on them and making stuff. And at some point, like I played a couple of bands briefly when I was a teenager, and I kind of realized that I hated performing and I didn't really like writing music. So I decided to become a sound engineer instead. And so, yeah, when I finished high school, I started studying sound engineering and really loved it. And playing the guitar kind of went on the back burner a bit, and I just kind of took on the world of music recording and production. So yeah, I love not being on stage. I love not being famous. I love not being recognized or anything, just doing stuff behind the scenes. And that's how I got to where I am today.
Very cool. But the 4-track that you had, was it like a Tascam or a Foster X? Or
Tascam Porter Studio 424, I think it was. Like some horrible sounding recordings on it. No idea where that thing is today. Lost or sold or given away or something, and probably sitting in some scrap heap now.
Isn't it crazy how far we've come from like that was, not bad for its time, but you look at what's available today, isn't it crazy?
Yeah, well, I remember like getting so used to the 4-track where you got 4 tracks, and once you've got 3 tracks used, you got to ping pong them all over to the 4th track, and if you want to have more. And then the first time using 8-track digital recorder, I was like, wow, 8 tracks, this is amazing. And then when you use a 16-track, you're going, holy shit, there's 16 tracks. And now I think back, I think, man, if we had like, Pro Tools back then with 1,000 voices available and, all the sample libraries and just everything there, it's just a whole different world. But I mean, it's kind of cool starting on the 4 tracks though, because you learn to take a pretty shitty piece of equipment and make the most out of it, and, like use the limitations and make something cool with it. Whereas now I feel like, the disadvantage of starting on something like Pro Tools is the sky's the limit from as soon as you start. And there's no real kind of boundaries or parameters to push there. You always kind of find limits of what you can do. So it's kind of cool starting on little things with limitations, just learning how to maximize what you've got.
Yeah, it probably gave you an advantage, exactly, because there's only so much you can do. And like I said, you got to bounce, 3 of the tracks to 1 of the tracks and stack, and, and now it's like, you got Pro Tools or Logic or whatever your flavor. I mean, it is so limitless. Even Logic, I mean, it feels like the thing could fly a plane, man. I mean, it's just so... do you think it's a hindrance sometimes, having all these choices?
Yes and no. I like to say no. Like I never like to fight the technology. Like I like to embrace it. And so maybe there's some sort of hindrance with being limited choices, but I like to be an optimist with that sort of stuff and embrace it rather than think, back in my day, I was a lot better when we didn't have all this crap. But I am still a big fan of, like having limitations in the studio. Like My favorite recording sessions we do these days are when we like rent an Airbnb or go into a house or something and just take a little rig in and a few microphones and plug in and make it work, as opposed to going into the $1 million studios where you got 96 channel console and just everything you could want there. I kind of like just having these rough little setups where you have a bit more fun and things are, you can kind of see what the limitations are and you make the most of those. So I think that comes from like, from coming up in New Zealand and coming up on like 4 tracks and things like that, as little like project studios, and as opposed to graduating full sail in America and jumping straight into like an LA multi-million-dollar studio, we get used to that as the bare minimum.
That's cool. No, that's really cool. I like the idea that getting an Airbnb and just a nice, cool environment. Do you feel that sets a different tone, a lot different tone from being in a studio where you can kind of, I don't know, maybe you can be more relaxed at home recording?
Yeah, completely different. I mean, partly because of the gear limitations and, the small setups and things. But I like when you're at like an Airbnb or like a home studio, there's not a clock that you're looking at, and you don't have to like tell someone what time you're going to come in and start and tell them when you're going to finish. And you don't feel like you're in someone else's space. Like, when you're at the LA studios where there's like 7 different studios in the building, you're not worried about like who's walking down the hallway and who's going to walk into your room and see what you're doing, or you don't have to worry about, can I open that door? Is there something private going on in there? Like, you've just got the whole space to yourself, and you got the Airbnb or the house, and you're on your own terms. You can start and stop whenever you want, and I much prefer those these days.
Yeah. No, I could see that. So take me to, how did you first start engineering in the studio? What was your first break or entryway into that?
I mean, I worked in New Zealand for a few years. There's a really small industry there. It's a really fun industry, like really cool people, no big budgets or anything like that. No $1 million budgets and no locking studios for 6 months and, trimming that. So it's very much on a small budget, but they're really good musicians and it's a lot of fun. Everyone's really nice and gets along, and it's like great environments. So I did some recording there, just like a lot of freelance stuff and a bit of live sound stuff and whatever I could to pay the bills and keep things moving, really. And then, I decided one day I wanted to move to New York. I'd been to New York briefly a couple of years earlier and really loved it, and I decided I wanted to move here. And I decided that trying to travel as a sound engineer, I'm just going to end up working in cafes and struggling and, taking bar work and whatnot. And there's no studio jobs around. So it's not, it's going to be fruitless trying to travel as a sound engineer. So I went back to university and got like a real degree. So I could come and get a real job when I'm overseas. And then, moved to New York, and within a week or so, I was like working in a big studio and doing all sorts of stuff. And, somehow it worked out that I could do sound engineering over here. So when I came over, I started doing some work. There's a studio up in Queens called, of course, the name will escape me right now. It's a great studio, Spin Recording Studios. And there's a couple of producers that had a room there, and they took me on just to do sessions with them. And so it's great because, within a week of being in New York, because in like the SSL rooms with all the, big live rooms and great mics and all that sort of stuff, all the sort of stuff that we don't really have a lot of in New Zealand, is like straight into it in New York. And then a job came up at a studio called Platinum Sound Recording Studios. It's they've kind of closed and changed a couple of locations now, and it's a slightly different studio now. But at the time, it was one of the big like Times Square studios. They had the 80-channel SSL, and all the A-list artists would come through there and whatnot. And so, they had one of their engineers quit, and none of the interns were quite ready to quite step up to that job. So they advertised, for people outside to come in. And I went along there. I had no expectations because I already had this gig up in Queens. So I just thought I'd go along and do the interview, see the studio at least, and there was something to do. And I was so relaxed that they just really liked me. I guess I wasn't as nervous about the whole thing as some of the other people were. And so they took me on as like a house engineer, like an assistant house engineer. And so that was kind of like the big break that I got. The first week I was in there, Miguel was doing an album there. He was doing his Kaleidoscope Dream album. And one of the engineers couldn't make it in on the Sunday or something. So I got asked to go in and just kind of fill in and take over for the day. And we got along really great. And I ended up like doing the rest of the album with them. And that album got Grammy nominated and went to #1 and that sort of carry on. So that was like the big break there, like jumping into that project. And really kind of learned about how the whole machine and the industry works and the major labels and all the radio promo and all the strategies and things like that. So sitting in on all the meetings with all the A&Rs and people and yeah, got to liaise with a lot of really great producers and other engineers and artists and whatnot. And yeah, that was the big break right there. And my career kind of just took off after that.
Oh yeah. I mean, working with an artist like Miguel, and the thing that I love about his sound, it's like, and you probably could break it down better than I'm able to verbalize it, but it's so well produced, but yet it has this bite to, I don't know if that's the best way to describe, but it's like, it's very well produced, but also at the same time, his sound is very real. It's not like too slick, too glossy. And I love that push and pull of his sound. Can you go into more detail about that? Like, how's it? Does Miguel come in and say, "This is what I want to do," and how do you put that sound together? It's so great.
Yeah, he's one of those artists that everything you hear on a Miguel album, like he wants it to be that way. That's his vision and his idea and how he wants to be. He'll work with different producers and whatnot, and he'll bring ideas and bring things along. But he very much like curates, what it's going to be like. No one's telling him what he should do and what he shouldn't do, and no one's like convincing him to do anything. It's very much like what he wants. He's really good like that. So yeah, the sounds might be created by different people, but it's very much how he wants them and the sound that he's got in his head. So at the time, he was kind of one of the people leading that kind of new wave of R&B around that time. It was like him and Frank Ocean of The Weeknd, and they're all kind of just coming up at the time. And it was quite different to that R&B that we'd had of all the like Usher and Chris Brown and Tank and, that kind of more traditional R&B. They kind of just started throwing tons of reverb and distortion on stuff and just kind of just doing their own thing, really. So, yeah, it was really fun being a part of that because, yeah, Miguel, he's really good on Pro Tools. Like, he'll jump in and add effects and do stuff, and he, like, records his own vocals. He's great like that. So a lot of the sounds and stuff that are in there, like, they really do come from him, and he doesn't really care what tool he's using or if it's right or wrong, if he's breaking a rule. Like, if he wants to fucking distort a vocal, he'll just pull up some random plugin and distort it and just do it. And if it sounds cool, it is cool. It doesn't matter what the tool is or... the inner purist engineer in me is often looking at these things going, oh, no, we can't do that. Like, the light's all weird. And in my head, I'm going, oh, but then you listen to the speakers, you go, actually, it feels really good. So, yeah, they were part of that new kind of generation that just did stuff that felt good and that didn't really conform to anything. But that's where a lot of that sound comes from. And then, like, vocally, he did all his vocals on a Shure SM57, just a $99 microphone. And it just sounded like him. And I remember one day for one song, he said, maybe we'll use a different mic on this, like something a bit more open. So I got out a vintage Telefunken 251, which is like a $30,000, like amazing, 1960s microphone. That's just the greatest microphone ever. Yeah. And I set it up, sang into it, and it just sounded like Miguel as well. So it didn't make a difference as well. That's when I realized how much of his personality is really coming through these recordings. And it doesn't really matter how he does it. He just it's just coming through. So that's really where the sound comes from. Yeah.
Yeah. He's very intuitive. And I can hear that in the recording. And it's so interesting to hear, your experience with him in the studio. Because I could see that. I could see that he's looking for something, but it probably doesn't matter the methodology of how he gets there or the tool he's used per se. He just knows what he wants. And I love it. I just love artists like that really are comfortable with their sound, where they're going. You could tell. I mean, it's so him, from the vocals to, the guitar to the mixing and the different keys that are used. And some of them are just so wild sounding, but yet it works. It all works, Yeah.
I remember one day, I mean, I won't name names or anything, but he had a lot of different producers coming through to work with him. And he had one session for a day or two with this like super famous like A-list producer. And afterwards, like a few days later, I was like, how was it working with him? It's like pretty cool. And he said, I hated it. It was horrible. Like, I had to do things how he wanted it to be. Like, he very much came in, was just stamping his sound and everything, and I hated it. And the stuff he did with him didn't make it to the album at all, like never got heard again. And I said to him, that's like really mature of you. Like a lot of people would have been like, wow, it's so amazing to work with these producers and just loved whatever they did, because of the name on it, whatever. He had the maturity to kind of go, actually, no, I don't. This is not my music. This is not what I want. Like, I actually don't like this. It doesn't matter who was telling me I should like it or shouldn't like it. He just knew what he did and didn't like. And I thought, because at the time he was like a relatively new artist, he was just kind of breaking through and whatnot. It was kind of cool of him to. I told him that. I said it's like really mature of you to kind of have that perspective and know what you want.
Yeah. I mean, it takes bravery, really, especially if you're working with a big name producer. I mean, the natural inclination for a lot of artists would be, well, I don't want to rock the boat. He's got a big name. But no, I could actually, from what you're telling me about him, I could see it that he's comfortable in who he is as an artist and where he wants to go, and he knows what he wants. He didn't
really care if it was going to number one or what it did on the charts. Like after the album came out, I asked him how it did with like sales and all that, and he had no idea. He said, "Oh, no, once it comes out, I don't really care. Like, put it out on the project or whatever." So yeah, he's not paid by like that sort of like charting and radio and commercial success and all that. Is desire, and that's it.
Yeah, that is so interesting, and I imagine the label was very supportive of him because you have an artist like that in their zone. I see them as hey, you do your thing, right? I mean,
yeah, a little bit. He had a really good. His manager is this guy called Mark, so he's amazing. He's a really great guy. And Mark like discovered Usher, I think, and brought up Chris Brown as well. Maybe I forget, but Mark was really in Miguel's corner. He was great like that. And there's a few times that the labels will be trying to tell Miguel like to do this or to do that, and Miguel will just like say, "No, that's not it."
Yeah.
Like for one of the songs, "How Many Drinks," it's got a feature with Kendrick Lamar in it. And I remember Kendrick wasn't big at the time. He was just kind of starting to break through as well, because this was like mid 2012. And I remember like sending the song to Kendrick, and it was like a Hotmail email address that I had to send it to back through a Hotmail email address. And there was a couple of other rappers that also did this feature as well and sent it to him. And the other rappers were like a lot better known than Kendrick was, but Kendrick's verse was just so cool, and we just immediately knew it was great. And the label was trying to tell him, these other rappers have got better names, it's better for radio, all this sort of stuff. But Miguel was just like, yeah, but Kendrick's verse is better. It's a better song with it. So he didn't care about who had the better recognition to get on radio and get a Grammy nomination or that sort of stuff. He just wanted the best for the song and like stuck to his guns. And yeah, Kendrick ended up on it. And I mean, Kendrick ended up blowing up around the same time as well. So yeah, it worked that way as well. But it was very much the decision was just made on like what it sounded like and how it felt, and if you liked it or not. Yeah.
It's just about trusting your gut, and it seems like he's in that zone. So that's very inspiring to hear that. That's just so cool. Yeah, is being comfortable, because usually, I think as an artist, if you're comfortable with where you're coming from, I think the audience can hear it if it's authentically you. And that's what I think of when I think of Miguel.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, that's so cool. And so I know you did some other sessions as well after Miguel. Who else did you work with?
Well, at Platinum Sound, I was there for 3 or 4 years, and we kind of worked with everyone in the R&B and hip hop industry and a lot of the pop industry. So I did like almost every rapper, and almost every rapper came through, and I did sessions with us at some point. We were doing stuff with like some of the Wu-Tang guys, and Mr. Rhymes and Meek Mill would come through, and Rick Ross would come through, and a lot of the New York rappers would come through. So we did a ton of that stuff, which really, I mean, I was really lucky. Everyone I worked with was really nice, and I got along great with them. But any engineer will tell you like hip hop sessions are where you really need to be like on your A game, and you need to be fast and on it, and things have to sound good, and you're going to be quick and reliable. And it's like 30 dudes in the control room all like hovering over your shoulder, but like waiting for you to make a mistake so they can rip you, and really kind of separates the pros from the not pros. And I'm lucky I never had any horror stories. I saw like other people kind of have horror stories there of making little mistakes or things crashing and whatnot, or losing files, and they like really paid for it. But for me, it was great. I tended to like kind of swim rather than sink in those sessions. And then like R&B artists, we did like Jennifer Hudson would come through, Jason Derulo did the stuff there, K. Michelle, Lettucey, like almost every R&B artist came through there as well. And then tons of pop stuff as well. Rita Ora would come through. We had going back 10 or 12 years now, I'd forget. But yeah, lots of amazing people came through. Yeah, it was really cool to kind of come to New York and jump in the deep end there and just kind of see how that end of the industry really works. Because when you're in New Zealand, you don't get a glimpse into that sort of world at all. But it's quite a different thing. So it's cool for this skinny little white guy back from New Zealand to somehow be rubbing shoulders with these people and doing sessions with Scott Storch and Pharrell and Salah Remy and all these sorts of people coming through there as well. So yeah, it was great like that. So I spent a few years there just like picking up tons of credits and working with lots of different people and making some really good relationships. It was hard work. It was really long hours that we're doing. We're often cracking 100 hours a week there, sort of thing. And like an 18-hour day was like a kind of normal day for us there. We'd normally go in about 1 p.m. or so and get set up and blind check or whatever, and then work through the night and often not finish until the sun's coming up and getting out of there at 6 or 7 in the morning. I got to the point where if I got home and it was still dark, I'd have to wait until the sun was rising to fall asleep because my body just knew it wasn't time to go to bed yet if it's still pitch black. So once it started getting light, I'd fall asleep really quick. And now I'm like the opposite. As soon as it starts getting dark now, I'm like, right, time to pack it up and go inside.
Yeah. That's so interesting. So a typical session would start, say, about 1 p.m. And when would you say is like the average between the sessions is like the peak time where things are really starting to like happen with the recording?
I mean, it depends who it is and what sort of stuff you're doing. But like in that pop R&B hip hop sort of world, like really around 6, 7, 8 p.m. is when stuff kind of starts happening. By 10 p.m. things are in like kind of full swing. So I say like really like 9, 10 p.m. till about 2 or 3 a.m. is like the most productive, like forward moving kind of fun environment to be in. For me, after like 2 or 3 a.m. it starts to drag a little bit, and it's like, often it's better just to pack it in and come back the next day and do things. But some people like to drag it out until the sun's coming up and even longer. So yeah, it all kind of changes, and some people will just work daytimes and they don't do nighttime anymore. But yeah, for a lot of that world, like the late evening, like till around, I guess on average around midnight, it's like the pretty creative sort of time. I know some people that'll work from like 10 a.m. and finish by 6 or 8 p.m. every day and go home for dinner and have like a normal life. And then some people that just live in the studio and will start at lunchtime and go through until they literally can't keep their eyes open anymore and call it all then. So,
is there some point during the session where you're just kind of like, it's, why don't we call it a day, come back with some fresh ears?
No, as an engineer, it's not really my job to say that. My job is to like create an environment that's really productive and conducive to making music and makes everyone else really comfortable and makes, keeps the creative flow going. So my job's not to tell people to stop and go home and go to sleep. My job is to have the studio set up and running in such a way that if they've got an idea and they want to do it, like they're comfortable and they're happy doing it and they can do it without too much obstruction. It's up to the producer and artist that when they want to go to sleep and when they want to call it a day or do something else, and they can do that without thinking, there's a guy in the room here that doesn't want to be here and wants to shut it down. And yeah, so my job's not to tell people that. My job's to let them decide when they want to do it.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, giving them that creative freedom just to let it flow. And what about, you ever have sessions where it's like the artist is trying to explain to you the sound that they're looking for? I mean, how do you take, abstract things where someone's like, I want this sound, or maybe they'll play you an example from a different recording, and how do you, because that's what I love about a great engineer, is just finding that sound that, maybe the artist doesn't know how to describe or how to get, how do you do that?
There's a couple ways I do that these days. Like one, I really like embracing happy accidents, and I really like working in such a way that you can allow accidents to happen. Like it might be that, it's something simple, like if I'm pulling up a plugin like I'll do it while the music's playing, and when you pull up some sort of random plugin, there might be some wild sounds coming out, and the professional way to do it would be to stop the playback, make sure the setting is around about what you think it should be, and hit play. But then you often like end up with something predictable and boring when you do that. Whereas, when you just like scroll through presets or pull up something you don't really know what's going on and just like play the music while you're doing it, sometimes just wild things come out of the speakers and it can be really cool. So often if the artist is like kind of searching for something new or searching for something different, like that's one way that I like to do it. Or it might be that, if they're recording an instrument, rather than thinking about the best way to record this and the most highest fidelity or whatever way of doing it, like just grab whatever the first microphone you see is and just shove it somewhere and hit record and just kind of see what happens. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. It's fine. But like that's kind of another way of just keeping a session moving fast and also just having these happy accidents where something really cool and unusual kind of happens. And it's fun when like artists and producers do that as well, when they just jump on their synthesizer and just scroll through presets rather than, carefully sculpting the sound they have in their head, just like see what happens and see what comes out. And that's how you always get kind of these cool, like unpredictable things. But yeah, sometimes I guess the easiest way of, when an artist wants a new sound is just to like kind of throw stuff at the wall and see what happens. The biggest challenge is probably when they have something specific in their head and they don't know how to explain it, and you've got to like figure that out and kind of hopefully guess the right thing, sort of thing. Especially if the artist is really particular about their one, but they don't know how to explain it. So yeah, those ones you just have to like use your experience and try and get there, like work with them and get there, and hopefully they got some patience and you'll get there with them. But my favorites are when they're a bit more kind of open-minded and they're like, don't really know what I want here, but I want something. Let's see what happens. Let's just do some random stuff and poke around and see if something cool comes out of it.
That's the most fun and creative, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I know, like, when I'm mixing stuff in my template, I'll have a bunch of effects that I never really use that are inactive and just ready to like pull in. And I keep them like that just so I can see them there. And if I'm ever sitting there thinking, I don't know what this needs, I don't know what to do next, I'll look at all these like inactive plugins that I've got sitting there that I don't really use. And I'll start like pulling stuff up and just seeing what they do and turning everything to 11 and doing things that are like a little bit outside of my comfortable zone and, doing stuff that is a bit unpredictable. I don't know what it's going to be. So yeah, for coming up with like new cool stuff, that's kind of one of the ways I like to do it, just to like not really know what I'm doing anymore and see what happens. Kind of give up control, I guess, is what it is.
Yeah, and I'm sure the artist loves that because they feel like they're getting something new and fresh and exciting at the same time. Something that's not been done.
They love it or they hate it. One of the two things.
Or they hate it.
It works or it doesn't work. But if it doesn't work. But I always find like there's a few artists that I've worked with lately that will do a bunch of stuff and they get scrapped and not used. And like I remember we're doing an album with Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds a few years ago, and recorded a ton of strings and everything, and like we ended up deleting most of them and just using about 20% of what we recorded. And there's one bit where we cut out a whole section of strings, like a real orchestra recording, and deleted it. And yeah, someone made a joke about that's $8,000 worth of string recording, like just thrown out. We would have been better off spending that money on something else. And Nick just shrugged his head, shrugged his shoulders, and said it's all part of the process. Like it's still an important part of the process. If we hadn't recorded that stuff and thrown it out, we wouldn't have known if it worked or not. It might not have led us to make a decision about something else to put in its place or whatnot. So he said it's not wasted, it's all just part of the process. So I was thinking about that, like, if I do a mix that doesn't quite work well, it doesn't sound great or something, and I have to fix it the next time, like it wasn't wasted time, like it's all still part of the process of getting to the finish line and everything. So yeah, if I try something and it doesn't work with an artist and they don't like it or whatever, it's not cool. Like for me, it's fine. It's all, just tell myself it's part of that process and it's still an important part. Not everything has to be done in like a linear way from A to B. Like, when you're making a record, you can kind of go down different paths and different roads, and all that kind of contributes to ending up where you end up. And that's a totally fine thing.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, you look at the Beatles. I mean, it's, 31 takes of the same song. Each one is like slightly different. I mean, it's just like, but I love what you said there, Nick Cave. It's like discovering you have to go through a process. You don't know what you don't know till you do it. And
Right.
it's a process of either elimination or supplementation, but you don't know. So you gotta try it. And if it means putting something in or taking something out, you're sculpting it as you go.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, as long as, not like doing so much that you're breaking budgets and things like that, and as long as everyone's got a bit of patience and, it's not too many steps backwards, and yeah, it's totally fine for me these days. I used to really, like when I worked at Platinum Sound, there was a producer that owned it called Jerry Wonder, and he's this really amazing producer. He's done, I tell you, like, was one of the like background members of the Fugees and did all the Fugees production, and he did a little Lauryn Hill stuff, and like an amazing producer. And he's got this kind of way of producing this really cool. It's different to that thing of like going down different roads and coming back. He very much just goes with his gut reaction every time. The first thing that comes out of his head is like what goes on the record sort of thing, or the first thing that feels right is it's there. And once it's in the record, it's very rare for him to take something out. Once he puts chords down and drums down and melodies and production stuff, it's very rare to take any of that stuff out. Like it's always a forward-looping process. And so I really enjoyed working with him in that sort of way. And I learned about that kind of relatively linear way of making records, of just laying a foundation, building on it, and never taking that foundation out, just keep going. And if it doesn't work, you throw the whole thing out, whatever. But you never kind of guess yourself and then do stuff and never, throw the foundation out and put a different one in. But then, so I went with that for like a long time. And then when I started working with Nick Cave and artists like that, I kind of realized, okay, as long as you're kind of patient, there are other ways to make records like that. And I've kind of enjoyed the last few years of doing it in that more non-linear sort of way and just trying things and throwing it out if it doesn't work. And
yeah. I mean, it's there's no one process. There's so many ways to get to the same destination, and that's great that you're open to that process. And one thing for me as an artist myself is that knowing what I can and cannot do, and one thing is I'm not an engineer. It's mixing and stuff like that. That's why I love a great engineer, because it's especially for a lot of artists who just don't have that skill set. I mean, what's your process in mixing? Is it something that you start off with the different instrument sets, you mix the drums separately, mix the bass, mix the guitar, keys, and put it together? Like, how do you build your mix?
For me, it's really important to have a good rough mix, because for me, the rough mix is like the blueprint of what the final mix is going to kind of follow. Like, it doesn't have to follow it, exactly, but there should be a rough mix with some intent there. So if someone's recorded a whole song, they've never made a rough mix out of it, they don't really know what they've got in their arrangement and their production. They've likely just been recording a bunch of stuff and kind of hoping for the best that at some point it's going to fall into place and someone will make it work. Whereas like an artist that's like built up the rough mix while they're recording, it doesn't have to be perfect, doesn't have to sound nice or anything, but it should just be intent there of how loud is the vocal, how loud is this little melodic piece? Is it a main thing that sits out the front? Is it a little background thing? Like what's the purpose of that thing being in there? What's the main instrument? Is the piano what the song is based around, or is it the acoustic guitar or whatnot? They're not just recording a piano, recording acoustic guitar and let the mixer make it work. Like, so when there's a good rough mix that's been done, I'll always use it as a blueprint for the mix. And I set it up in my studio that I can just hit a button and listen to the rough mix at any time and flip between my mix and the rough mix. And often I'll spend a lot of time on my mix and I kind of wonder where to go next or what to do with it. And I'll flick to the rough mix and I realize that I've been going in the wrong direction with something, and I've been emphasizing the wrong things and chasing the wrong things or whatnot. And they had a different thing going on in their rough mix. Or maybe I've made the mix sound great and it sounds huge and massive and it really slaps you in the face, but it's lost like the vibe or the soul that the rough mix had, something unique about that they really liked. I'll have to, figure out what that is and do that. So yeah, I really like having a good rough mix, and the better the rough mix, the better that kind of benchmark is of what my mix has to be. So if it is like a well-made rough mix, it sounds great and it's like, kind of like release quality, it really makes you kind of step up your game. You have to work really hard to justify why they're paying you to mix it and actually make it sound better and feel better than what the rough mix is. So yeah, I don't necessarily have a way of like, muting everything and then bringing up the kick drum and then bringing up the snare drum and bringing up the bass and bringing up the guitars and the keyboards and whatnot. I kind of start with everything, and I hope that what they send me matches the rough mix at least. So that's my starting point. If it's not, I figure out why it's not and what's changed, and I'll try and kind of match it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I start the mix by fixing the stuff that annoys me and distracts me. Like I'll always go through it and clean up like clicks and pops and rumble and all that sort of stuff. Like anything that makes me forget that I'm listening to a song and reminds me that I'm listening to a bunch of files or whatnot. Like I'll fix that stuff first, just because it's annoying as well. Like gets out of the way. So that's normally a lot of time on vocals of like cleaning up like stupid like headphone bleed and clicks and pops and people shuffling and hitting mic stands and all that. Get it? So none of that distracts from the song, and you just listen to the song again. And then, yeah, it's just a case of building up and getting it better and better and better. And maybe that means beefing up the drums, and then the drums are beef, so you got to make everything else kind of match that. Or maybe it's figuring out what kind of vibe or soul they were trying to go for in the rough mix, and bringing that out and making that better as well. It all depends on what sort of music it is. But I don't have like a formulaic way of like starting with the rhythm section, then adding this, then adding that, because I find when I do that, I spend too long like zoomed in on what I'm listening to, like thinking of just drums and all the faders and drums doing, and then the bass and the waveform and what that looks like, and I kind of forget about what the actual song is. So I find it a lot easier just to listen to it as a song and just bring things out and work on it as a song rather than a bunch of individual elements and things like that. So yeah, that every song's different. It all depends on how good it sounds when it starts and how good the rough mix is and what that starting point is. But generally just working on it as a song rather than a bunch of individual elements.
That's great.
One thing I've learned to always do is always keep the vocal in when I'm working on anything. I find if I mute the vocal and just work on the musical elements and then go to put the vocal back in, I've just like butchered it and it doesn't sound right. It doesn't feel right. The vocal always feels like an afterthought like that. But if you have the vocal playing, while you're listening the whole time, you find yourself building a song around a vocal, and it typically connects a bit more with the listener at the end because if the vocals are the forefront and the vocals are the thing that's grabbing people's attention and keeping them listening. And the vocals normally like the personality of the song as well. So there's probably the only kind of rule I have is like keep the vocal in there for 99% of the time when you're mixing.
Oh, for sure. So what about when artists send you like their home recordings or their studio recordings, but they want you to mix? What are some of the things that you look out for that artists themselves could work on better, possibly the better, microphone settings for the vocals or things that, make it not necessarily easier, but it's more transferable when it gets to the mixing process to make it better from the beginning?
A lot of it is the acoustics of the recording space. If they're recording a vocal at home in a really reverberant room that doesn't sound good when there's a ton of noise and whatnot, it doesn't really matter what mic you're using. It's going to sound kind of rough and often be detrimental to the vocal unless you're going for that sound. But 9 times out of 10, everyone's just going for a nice, clean, clear vocal sound. So for me, for the most part, I don't really care what mics they're using. I don't care what mic preamps they're using, what gear they have and all that. Like just be in like a nice sounding space that doesn't have too many resonances and weird things going on, is reasonably quiet as well. And from there, you can kind of do anything with it. And then the acoustics of their monitoring environment as well. Like often like bedroom producers, you can hear when they send me stuff, you can hear if there's like some real acoustic problems in their room because certain bass lines will be super loud with what they're doing. And you can tell it's not intentionally that loud. Like there's something going on in the room where they've got, phase cancellation going on at a certain frequency or, modal stuff going on and they can't hear 50 hertz, so they're cranking up the 50 hertz into their bass line. And then when you bring it into a room, you can hear everything. You're like, okay, yeah, there's some real things going on here. So you can normally tell when there's things like that going. So often I'll ask like what speakers they're using, and if they're using a subwoofer, often the subwoofer's like way too loud or way too quiet, or it's like out of phase with everything else and it's creating more problems. So yeah, so that's the main thing I ask is to make sure they've got a decent set of headphones or something, like kind of get their spaces set up as well as they can, and then have decent recordings and decent productions. That's the main thing. And then, of course, not, putting everything into the red and like just turning everything up, everything louder than everything else sort of thing. You don't need to turn everything to 11, like, show some restraint. That's the other thing I sometimes have to emphasize. I'll make it loud. Like, don't worry, it's going to be loud. I can make it loud. That's a really easy thing to do. You don't have to have everything in the red at the very start to make it loud. That's not how it works. So yeah, like decent acoustic space and, not clipping everything too hard, unless it's intentional. And from there I can kind of take everything else. I'm kind of cool with, what effects people want to use and what recording techniques they want to use and what production decisions they make. That's like on them. Like, they can do whatever they want and I'll embrace it and take that. So I would never try to micromanage the way people put records together or anything like that. I would never want people to put records together in a way just to please the mixing engineer. The same way, like, someone that is writing a song shouldn't have to think about the production when they're writing the song. Like, have good chords, good lyrics, good melody, and you've got a good song. Make the production work around that. The mixings should work around the production, emphasize the best of the production. The same way, like when I'm mixing, I don't think about what the mastering engineer wants. I don't think about the levels that Spotify wants or anything like that. I just serve the song, serve the production, and make sure that's great. And then the mastering engineer can take what I do and, they can use that. But I would never change the mix based on what the mastering engineer wants. The same way the producer should never change what they do just based on what a mixer wants, sort of thing,
Yeah.
Like I like to fit in with the process and, make the most of what there is rather than try and control everything. Yeah.
I'm seeing why you were picked directly out of New Zealand, fresher than New York. You just got this very open, personality. You seem to be great to work with. I'm trying to think of, did you ever have any challenges coming up in your career where, a particular setback where you thought, gosh, how am I going to get around this? And how did you work it out?
Yeah, I mean, everyone has like little setbacks every now and then, whether they don't get a gig or, they come out lose a gig for whatever reason, or an artist goes off to a different city and does stuff there. I mean, I've been lucky that every time I've been like, or I wonder what's going on here, I kind of land on my feet and something else comes along and I'm kind of good to go. I've had things like when COVID hit, like I was doing a lot of touring work and I was like 4 days away from flying to Europe for like 3 or 4 months to do a Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds tour, and suddenly got cancelled because of COVID. But then the same day I got cancelled, I got a call from a studio in California that I worked out of before, and then an artist coming in and asked me if I could come in and engineer it or, work on it, and ended up working on that project for like the next 4 or 5 months straight sort of thing. And it's, still one of my main clients today, and it's turned into like 4 years of kind of on and off work, and it's an amazing record that we're working on. So you often have these weird little setbacks where I think, oh God, this sucks, this is awful, this is like a catastrophe. And then somehow I just like end up being in the right place at the right time to make the most of something else. So things like, COVID made it tricky. I remember, when end of 2016, like when the politics in America just got like wild and everyone got really divided and it was awful. And
oh yeah,
I just as a non-American, I was just like, I hate this. Like this is so horrible. Like politics don't need to be such a like nasty thing to be a part of. And I got so sick of America and sick of just like everything going on, how miserable everyone was, that I said like, right, I'm going to leave America. I think I'm done with this place for a while. And I booked a one-way ticket down to Argentina, and I moved down there for about 6 months. And I'd come back to, America when I had a little tour. I had like a session I had to do or something. But yeah, I took some speakers and my Pro Tools rig down there, and I just worked remotely down there and just drank wine and ate steak and just hung out and went to like tons of football matches and became a big supporter of one of the clubs down there. And just kind of like embraced that sort of culture. It was just something different. And then, after I was down there for a while, I realized it was kind of time to come back to America and, start proper work up again and whatnot. And I had to make a choice, and I didn't really want to go back to New York because I was doing freelance stuff and I was doing touring stuff by then, so I wasn't doing much work in New York itself. And I had to decide if I was going to like move back to New Zealand or move to somewhere fun like New Orleans to just have like a fun time there or whatnot. And then about the same time, someone called me and asked me if I wanted to run a studio in California, in Malibu, and I said not really. Like, I don't really want to go to LA. And then I saw the studio and it was in Malibu and it was a really amazing studio. So I thought, okay, maybe I'll do a little stint in Malibu. So yeah, I went there and started like working out of the studio called Woodshed Recording, and next minute had like a car and an apartment and a partner or whatnot, and I just lived in Los Angeles all of a sudden. That was my life for a while after that. So yeah, like another one of those examples of where you kind of hit a little crossroads, you're not sure what's going to happen, and then yeah, these opportunities just pop up and you make the most of them, and it works. Yes, that's where that cliche comes in. I hate using little cliche phrases like this, but they say luck is where hard work meets opportunity.
Yeah.
So you're not like just saying you're lucky to do stuff. It doesn't really mean anything. Like if you work hard, you'll be ready for the opportunities that come along, and when they present themselves, you can grab them with both hands and do something with them. So I've kind of had these like lucky moments like that in my career every now and then, where like opportunities will pop up that are great, but if I hadn't done the hard work before that, I weren't prepared for them. Like I wouldn't be able to make the most of them. But I've kind of always put myself in positions where you can make the most of them. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I love how you went to Argentina for 6 months. I tell you, that sounds like such an amazing reset. I mean, was that what it was for you as far as, because I think there's so many artists and people, even outside the music industry, if they could, they would do a hard reset, go somewhere and just, you're still doing your thing, you're still doing your work, but it's just a different environment, a different setting, a different culture. I mean,
it's really hypnotic. I mean, every day was like a little adventure down there. It was great for that. It worked out. Like when I was about to fly down there, I booked an Airbnb for like 10 weeks or 12 weeks or something like that. Like a few months, like just got an apartment, and, I was going to be where I was going to stay. And the morning that I was about to fly out there, I got an email saying my Airbnb had been cancelled. And I was like, God damn it, this is not right. I'm flying out tonight, like one-way ticket. Like, what am I going to do? And I never send angry emails. Like, it's just something that I do. And this day, I sent an angry email. And as soon as I hit send, I thought, Lance, you asshole. Like, why did you do that? It's not what you meant to do. And immediately I got a response from the owner of the apartment saying, oh, I'm really, really sorry. There's like a burst water pipe and there's been flooding in there and the place is like condemned and it's, like ruined. It's just, we're really sorry, but it's, total accident. It's just out of our control, out of our hands. I said, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to be an asshole like that. And they said, oh, well, we have a friend that's got a spare room in their apartment. You can go and stay there. I said, no, I don't want to like stay with someone else in their apartment. Like, I want my own place. Like, I'm a grown adult. Like, I don't need a roommate. And I wanted somewhere I could work from home as well. So I said, that's not going to work. And they said, oh, no, it's fine. They're going away for most of the summer anyway. So you'll have the place to yourself and they're nice people and all that. So I said, fine, like I'm flying out tonight. I don't have much of a choice. So I said, yeah, cool, we'll do that. And secretly I was like looking up, trying to find like other apartments and stuff like that. But to try book a 3-month apartment with less than 24 hours notice is pretty tough to do. So it's like, right, I'll do this to get started. I'll figure it out once I'm down there. And so, yeah, when I got down there, I landed and I called a taxi to the address that I'd been given. And they opened the door and there's all these people that had champagne in their hands ready to like, ready to have me there. And they threw a welcome party for me. And the person I was staying with like co-owned a restaurant. So we'd always go to this restaurant, this like fancy sushi place I owned down there, and had tons of contacts and like, hospitality, entertainment industry. So we'd always just go to events and going to things, and all their friends like kind of embraced me as one of them as well. So this huge group of friends down there with lots of people to hang out with and people that did all sorts of like kind of cool things down there. So it's not like I just went down there by myself and I kind of, was a little hermit in an apartment down there or just walking around by myself, but this great friend group, and was kind of really productive with my time mixing and eating and drinking and going out. And the football culture down there is really crazy. It's a whole another world, like completely different over here. And so one of the reasons I wanted to go down there is because I've been there a few times before and I kind of learned about it, but I'd never been to one of their football matches yet. And I knew that after my touring in Europe with an American, with Wilco, had finished, and about a week later was like the big football match down there. It's the River Plate versus Boca Juniors, which are the two Buenos Aires teams. And when they play each other, it's just chaos, and it's a huge event. And they've got deep-seated hatred for each other. And it was going to be at the River Plate Stadium, which is the team that I kind of liked. So I thought, right, that's kind of why I went down to Argentina. It's like I'll go to the Super Classico match, and then I'll just live in Argentina for a while after that and see what happens. So I went down and went to the Super Classico, and it was like the greatest day ever. It was really, really incredible experience. And so I became like a member of the club and started buying tickets to their other matches. And it was walking distance from the apartment that I was staying in. So I just walked there with all the supporters and learned all the chants and things like that and the songs you have to sing. And because if you don't sing along, they know that you're a tourist, and you get robbed and you get abused and harassed and stuff. So if you sing along, like, you blend in with the crowd and you're good to go. But if you just like kind of sit there and bring the vibe down, they know
pick up on that.
One of my friends was a supporter of a different club down there, and he was in like the kind of ultra section, like the really rowdy section. And it's only home supporters there. So you're only allowed to be a supporter of the club that's the home team. Like, the opposition is not allowed into the stadium because there's too much violence and whatnot. And so even though it's all home supporters there, like, someone came up to rob him. They like threatened him with a knife or something and said, give me your phone and your wallet. Like, this is in the stadium, like in the crowd.
Whoa.
And he was really quick thinking, and he yelled at the guy and he said, "Hey, you're a supporter of the other team. Like, what are you doing in the stadium?" And all the people around him heard, and they're like, "Yeah, what is the supporter of the other team doing here? Like, get the fuck out of our stadium." Like, everybody get him. And the guy had to run away because the whole crowd thought he was supporting the other team. And so my friend didn't get robbed after that. But that's a kind of like, it's like quite different to sports culture up here. It's like a whole religion down there. So I really enjoyed, like, outside of the music thing, just having something else it was fun to get involved with. And I mean, I wasn't robbing people in stadiums, but, like a whole kind of explore. And I really enjoyed that part of it as well.
When you came back to the States, did you feel refreshed? Did you feel like, I don't know, just like a computer, laptop, you turn it on, turn it off. Sometimes you got to reset. Did you feel different?
Yeah, I did. Because it's like 6 or 8 months kind of down there and popping back for tours and whatnot when I had to. And then I went to New Zealand for a decent stint at the end of the year and kind of caught up to all my friends and family and stuff like that and spent a bit of time there. And at the end of the year, it was the summer in New Zealand as well. So while it was cold in New York, it was nice and warm in New Zealand. So I was just sitting by the pool and, kind of not a care in the world. And then, when I got the call about, running the studio in California and going out there, I did feel really refreshed when I came out. Like, I was ready for a new thing and kind of a new adventure and new chapter in life of Lance. So doing the Argentina thing, it was a cool reset in that. So it's just a completely different culture to America and culture to New Zealand. It's just, a total, like, kind of nice culture shock that kind of zaps you out of, what you're doing. And it was a good reset. But in saying that though, as well, like, these days, like, I do so much different stuff these days that, like, nothing gets monotonous for me. Like, it's kind of why I'm in this world. Like, I could never work in an office and have a 9 to 5 job and go to the same place every day. Like, even being an employee at a studio would get old to me a lot when you go into the same room every day at the same time and the same people, and it starts to get a little bit predictable sometimes. I really enjoyed, like, doing touring work was great because you're different cities and different countries every day, and you're waking up in different places and different venues and different people, and there's always a little sense of adventure. And then doing freelance studio work, there's always that sense of adventure as well, especially when you travel with artists to different studios and different places with different producers. You never really know what you're going to be doing in 2 weeks' time or 2 months' time or 6 months' time. So, like, with mixing, like, it's great because you're always working on different projects and different songs, and it's never like the same thing you're doing over and over. Whereas I feel like if I worked in like television post-production, I was working on the same shows nonstop, it just would become monotonous for me, and that sense of excitement of the adventure kind of goes away. So it's not like I was dulled down into like being in the same place every day and just bored and miserable. Like I was still doing fun stuff. I was doing touring work with Wilco and I was doing freelance recording and mixing. So still really cool. But I guess, yeah, at that point I'd moved to New York and I'd been there for 5 or 6 years or so. So it was nice just to like have something different there of like suddenly you're like not living in New York anymore and the world is your oyster again. You can choose what you want to do and where you want to go. It was kind of cool like that. That sense of adventure came back a bit more. So yeah, and that's when we went to LA and new job, new apartment, new people I was with and everything. And it was a whole new world. And I stayed out there for about 5 years or so until last year when I came back to New York.
Yeah, I mean, you hit on so many points, I think, about keeping it fresh, keeping it interesting, switching it up, getting out of the monotony of life. I think having these adventures is a spark that a lot of people need. So that within itself is very inspiring. Tell me about, touring, doing live sound versus engineering. I mean, what are the biggest differences between the two, and how do you navigate that?
Well, yeah, touring, I've only recently just stopped doing touring work. I was meant to be going out with Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds again next month, but I've been so busy in the studio and I've been really enjoying it. I'm just doing studio stuff. So I've kind of quit doing touring, but with touring, it's never really about the work that it's doing. It's more about like camaraderie with the crew and the travel and that kind of just jumping on a plane and going to different places every month or so. That's what I enjoyed out of it. So I just did, when I was on tour, I wasn't doing front of house sound, I was doing just backline work. So I was one of the people on the stage, like setting out the stage and during the show, making sure everything's working. I mean, breaks during the show, that's me like running on the stage, having a horrible time, or 20,000 people watching you, like trying to fix a guitar amp or whatever. And then breaking down the stage after that. So I wasn't like in front of the console or anything like that. It was completely different to the studio work. But I loved it because when I was working at Platinum Sound, we'd been there for 3 or 4 years and I was getting a bit burnt out with the long hours. And there'd been this big exodus of people out of New York, like leaving for Los Angeles. So a lot of the industry was kind of like heading out of there. And we went from the first couple of years, like doing stuff like Miguel full albums and working with all these like A-list artists and doing all these great projects, to like a lot more like independent, rappers rapping over MP3s downloaded off YouTube and stuff like that. And when you're doing 100 hours working on like Miguel albums, it's really great and it's really rewarding and it's really fun and it's exciting. You're doing 100-hour weeks recording like rappers over MP3s downloaded off YouTube. It just kind of gets old a little bit. And so, at some point I decided that it might be time for a little change. And we did an album with Melissa Etheridge, which is amazing. She's like a brilliant musician and an amazing person, one of my favorite people in the world. And after the album came out, she was about to do a week of like promo stuff in New York, like Good Morning America and Howard Stern show and Today Show and Letterman or whatever shows it was. And so they asked if they could do the rehearsals of Platinum Sound, and we said, yeah. And her front of house engineer and production manager, I know he was the monitor engineer for Metallica. And so it's kind of a new world. It's like, it's be interesting to like get to know this guy and kind of learn about, what it's like working with Metallica and going on tour and stuff like that. And so when they came, I helped him out and kind of was his, right-hand man for the week and just getting up at like 4 a.m. to go to Good Morning America with them and kind of seeing how the TV world works and all that sort of stuff. It was a really fun week. And I was, just like helped out and got stuck in and did whatever I could. And then when they were doing a tour later that year, he said to me, do you want to come on the tour? Like, it'd be really fun to have you on the tour and be really helpful. So I said, sure, I knew nothing about touring. And we did a 6-week tour around America, and I was just one of the guitar techs and, backline techs on the show. And I didn't even know we had like a lighting guy and a front of house guy and a monitor guy and a backline guy and the merch guy. I thought everyone just kind of does a bit of everything. And, when the show is about to start, you kind of figure it out and you hang it over there by the console and you hang out by the stage and whatnot. So I kind of learned all about how the touring world works and how unions work and, basically the live sound world. And so at the end of the tour, I said to the team, if you guys hear of any like gigs that come up, like let me know. And I'd love to, like start doing touring work instead of just going back to the studio. And so a few weeks later, one of them like hit me up and they said, "Oh, Wilco is looking for a new backline engineer, a new backline tech. Here's a phone number, like call this number and see what happens." And so I called the number, and yeah, they need a new like keyboard guitar tech, and started working with them. And as part of that family, I mean, they're still kind of my family now, but I was working with them for good like 6 or 7 years really, and we toured the world and went to Europe and Japan and all over America, and it was really enjoyable because you're like when you're mixing, often you're by yourself or you're with one or two other people, and it gets kind of a solitary. You're stuck in one little room by yourself for most of the time. It can get kind of just lonely, and you don't get much of that camaraderie that you can kind of get in other places. So it's cool to go touring when you've got a crew of people. And the Wilco crew was great. They're just like amazing people. We all became best friends, and the band is great, and they're really nice people, and the management was great. And it was a really amazing group of people to be with. So that's kind of why I did it for so long, really just to hang out with the crew and be with them. If I never set foot on another stage again, like I wouldn't be too upset. I was never really about the work. I still like, when we get to an empty stage in the morning, like I don't get a sense of excitement. I'm like, oh, there's a ton of work we're going to do, but I'm with that. Whereas when I get into the studio in the morning, I'm like, yeah, this is going to be a good day. I'm in the studio today. So yeah, it's never about the work and touring. It's more about just the travel and just jumping on a flight and going to a new country and staying in your hotel somewhere and seeing the crew that you get along so well with and having experiences with them. So it's great for that. It's great for you getting out of your city and doing new stuff and having adventures. So I was with Wilco for 6 or 7 years, and I switched over and did some tours with Nerd Cave and the Bad Seeds after I've done studio work with them. And then, like the last couple of years with studio work, I've done so much travel with it as well. And I've worked with so many great like groups of, producers and artists and camps that I've been with. That I don't really need to do the touring work anymore because, I've been doing sessions in London and France and, setting up Airbnbs in Berlin and doing camps there and, traveling between LA and New York a lot. So I still get that like kind of that travel bug still gets like, sorted out, but I don't have to go on stages anymore. I recommend touring for everyone to do it for a little bit at some point. It's a real eye opener. It's a whole different world out there, and it's if you get in with like a good crew and a good band, that's well organized and like properly funded and everyone's paid well and taken care of well, then it's a really rewarding thing to do. Yeah,
absolutely. So it sounds very adventurous. So tell me,
as far as like techniques about live sound versus studio, I couldn't really tell you. I didn't really pay attention to it too much. I don't really care too much about it.
Two different animals, right? I mean, they're so different.
Yeah, no. Yeah.
So what's next in the future for you?
Well, I moved back to New York about 1.5 years ago. And since I've moved back to New York, I've spent like 90% of the time on the road anyway, like doing sessions in LA and over in Europe and wherever I'm needed. So hopefully do a little bit more work in New York, like, sleep in my own bed and just take the train to work rather than like checking to yet another hotel and taking yet another Uber to a studio. And like, it's nice to do stuff here. A lot of the studios have closed in New York and a lot of people have left, but there's still a couple of really good ones here. And there's still like a few artists that are really great that I enjoy working with over here. A lot of them are closed down. We've still got Electric Lady and Power Station, a few ones like that. So there's still some nice places to work out of. And I got a few clients that have got their own studios around the city as well. So, like sometimes I'll take a train and go upstate and stay with a client up there and, they've got the house up there or some sort of big shed barn or something set up into a studio. So we'll just stay on site and do stuff up there. So there's a lot of that. And then, like I just took over the space in Brooklyn and kind of just started getting my studio set up here. So I've got like a decent mixing space to work out of again. So making the most of this place as well and getting things done. There's a few like regular clients I got. There's one, my main client at the moment is one of those really like private kind of secretive clients. I have to like bite my tongue a little bit about the sort of stuff I'm working on, but it's a really cool project that we're doing. It's been going on for a while and hopefully it's keeping me employed. So we'll go on for a while longer. But yeah, like, so a lot of recording and mixing, it's keeping me really busy doing that. And then Yeah, been doing bits and pieces with there's an R&B artist called Blast from LA that's been kind of making waves and doing a lot of cool stuff the last few years. He's part of this kind of LA wave of artists that are coming back and making hip hop and R&B that's really cool to be part of.
Nice.
So doing a lot of stuff with him. We just did an album that's just come out and is doing quite well, and working on some other stuff. Been doing little bits and pieces with like Mumford and Sons. One of the guys lives in the city here, and he's got a place upstate. So we'll go up there and do little sessions up there and bits and pieces, and send it off to the rest of the band, or they'll take it and, you know, develop it with producers around the place. And we did one really amazing camp up at his place at the end of last year, where there's this property upstate, and there's a couple of houses and cottages and barns and stuff on the property, and he owns it with some friends. And we set up like 4 different studios there, 2 like full studios with bands and, you know, decent headphone systems and drums and piano and bass and guitar. So the whole band could like play together at once. Yeah. And there was one like electronic studio where there were a bunch of synthesizers and drum machines and, you know, an Ableton rig and whatnot in there. And then one like acoustic rig where there was just like a vocal mic and a grand piano with mics in it. And, you know, you could take an acoustic guitar up if you wanted, but it was more about just writing songs there. And these 4 different spaces, we just had them running all day and evening. And everyone would stop and eat lunch together, and everyone would stop and eat dinner together. And then people just kind of bounce around different spaces. And it wasn't for Mumford & Sons or anything. Like, no one was writing for anything in particular. It's just like people could make stuff whatever they wanted to. And if you wanted to do something with it, do it. If you didn't want to do anything, you have to do it.
Wow.
And like the Mumford & Sons band was there, and like Maggie Rogers was there, and Clairo, and all these different writers and producers, and a couple of amazing engineers came up and helped out as well. And it was just like really great weekend of 3 or 4 days of like 28 of us just like becoming this one big happy family sort of thing, and making a bunch of music and having a lot of fun. So he's been talking about doing some more of those this year as well. So hopefully, yeah, do some more of those and get some new people in there, and, you know, just kind of see what happens. And it's one of those things that everyone really looked forward to, and everyone really loved it and has been talking about it ever since. And we've still got a group chat of everyone that was there, like 18 people or 20 people or something in this WhatsApp group. And whenever someone releases an album, everyone texts about the album and talks about it. Or, you know, when everyone bumps into each other at different studios around the place, we'll send a photo of the group and everyone reminisces and stuff. And so that's been one of my favorite sessions. And yeah, hopefully do some more of those this year as well.
Yeah, that sounds like crazy fun. 4 days of bouncing from different, you know, rooms and recording and jamming, and man, yeah, I heard of anything like that, but it's like that's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, like a lot of people will do the writing camps, and they're often really horrible because there's a bunch of people just like trying to pitch ideas to one artist, and everyone's like competing, and everyone's trying to get into the rooms, and there's all sorts of politics and stuff, and often everything that gets recorded, just nothing happens with it anyway, and it's kind of just a big waste of time. And this one was really cool because there was no like ulterior motives. There was no goal of like pitching stuff to any particular artist or anything like that. It was just like everyone come along, eat some food, have some fun, drink some wine, like hang out and make some music and do whatever. And so everyone was just in a great mood. And yeah, it's really enjoyable when it's like that.
Yeah. Sounds perfect to me. Eat food, drink wine, jam. Well, that is awesome. So, Lance, tell us where the audience can find you.
So you need to find me, I guess, like Instagram is the great big wide way these days, where everyone can find me. The handle is Sound Guy Lance. One of those stupid names you come up with when Instagram was brand new and you have to think of something on the spot. So you just go Sound Guy Lance, and it just becomes like a thing after that. People start calling you that, it becomes your nickname. But yeah, I've got a website, soundguylance.com. I never update the website. I look at it like once every 2 years. So I've no idea if it's even working now, but maybe. But yeah, soundguylance.com. Instagram is @soundguylance. I don't do Twitter or any of that sort of stuff. And then I have an email address, lance@soundguylance.com. So basically, if you punch in Sound Guy Lance, something about me should come up on the internet.
Awesome. Well, Lance, it's been an honor and a privilege to have you on the show today, and I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, it's been, I'm sorry if I rambled a lot. I don't do a huge amount of these things, so sometimes I don't talk a lot, and it's one of the reasons that I get on well with people in the studio. I'm really quiet in the studio, so sometimes when I do talk, I just ramble and, throw it out there. Maybe it makes sense. Maybe it doesn't. But
No, everything you said today, you gave so much great information and also a lot of gold about just life balance, which I think is it really any industry. It's like there's a lot of lack of work-life balance, and to hear about your adventures and keeping it fresh and interesting, that is super inspiring because just so many people can just get stuck in a rut and you just can't. Yeah. And you're doing the same thing, and sometimes it's easy from the outside in to look at someone and say, well, just get up and move, but when you're in it, that's sometimes you can't see,
Yeah. And there's a lot of conversations around the studio, especially with engineers. Like, it seems to be all about gear and techniques and the engineer space and things like that. I don't find that interesting at all. I just find it really boring. So I kind of like the discussion about, managing work-life balances and relationships and goals and things like that. I'm much more interesting than telling you what compressors I've got in the rack here and when my feet would not.
No, it's that's really what it is for me. So, but I so much appreciate it, and I'd love to have you on again in the future. This was so much fun.
Yeah. Whenever I'm around, yeah, for sure.
You got it, Lance. Well, I appreciate it, and we'll get this out to you soon.
Cool, man. All right. Thanks very much.
Hey, appreciate you. Thank you.
All right. Have a good one.
You too, man. Thank you.
All right.
Bye.